All right, welcome everyone. This is the first of the prob podcast on probability. We are now in Unit 2. And so this unit is all about probability. So we're going to start there. So you should be looking at your notes in your packet that was handed out to you. And so the first thing we want to do is we want to talk about probability. And what probability is probability is the li how likely an event is to occur. So if you want to write that definition in there, you can. I'll just be writing around the page, and so that way you can follow along and add in. So there we go. Okay. So I'm going to just write here. So probability, whoops, that's a little thick. So let's take that down a little bit. And we're going to erase that. Okay. So probability is how likely an event is to occur. Okay. And then there are other vocabulary words you're going to have to know, but please be aware that the probability of an event A, and an event is one or more outcomes. And what an outcome is, it's the result of a single trial of an experiment. So the example would be if you roll a dice. As soon as you roll it and you get one, that's an outcome. You roll it again, that's a second outcome. Well, we now have an event because you have more than one outcome. So if you've ever seen people play Vegas where they roll the dice several times, those would be events because they have more than one outcome. And then an experiment is a situation that involves chance or probability. So that would be rolling a die, flipping a coin, playing with a spinner. It would also include a deck of cards. Those are commonly used ones that we use a lot. If you've ever gone somewhere and they ask you to count the number of marbles that are in a jar or things like that, you're doing a prediction, but there's also some probability can be involved too. That's how some people are able to figure it out. You do have to be aware, and so the way we're going to write probability of an event A, so keeping in mind an event is one or more outcomes, and an outcome is the result of a single trial. All right. So the way you would write the probability would be P of A. And so that's how you write it, with the capital letter P and the A in parentheses. And the way that you find that, I'm going to shrink this down just a little bit more. The way that you find that is, I always think of it as the way you write a fraction, which is a part over the whole. But another way to look at this, when you write probability A, the top is going to be the number of ways that an event can occur. So number of ways an event can occur. And then the bottom here is going to be your total number of possible outcomes. And I'm going to abbreviate a little bit. Total number of possible outcomes. All right. And we'll come across this later, but just a couple of things that you might want to know. Your probability is always a number between 0 and 1, and it does include 0 and 1. So we're going to go on to the next slide. I didn't mean to hit that. I meant to hit this. All right. And so what we want to do here, we want to look at this particular one. Now, on your handout, it's going to be very difficult to read. We're on page 2B, but on here, it'll be a lot easier. And so if you notice, you have the experiment, and it says you have a spinner with 5 equal sections, and they're colored yellow, purple, orange, red, and green. After you spinning the spinner, what is the probability of landing on each color? Now keep in mind, we talked about probability being the number of ways an event can occur, an event A can occur, and then the total number of possible outcomes. So how many spaces can you land on and get a yellow? Well, you can only do that once, all right? And then how many total spaces are there? Well, it's 5. Now, one of the things you're going to notice is as you go down, what do you see? You see that all of these, it's in 5 equal sectors, so they all have an equal likelihood of happening. So all of these are going to be 1 out of 5. All right. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense to you. Again, equally likely to occur, and we're going to talk about equally likely shortly in probably another podcast. So when we go to the next page, you'll notice that experiment 2 is now we are rolling a die. So first we were doing a spinner, now we are rolling a die, and that's what you call one is a die, and it's 2 or more, it's dice. Okay, so you have a single 6-sided die is rolled, and it's the ones you used to all the time. So what is the probability of each outcome? Okay, so what they're asking is, what's the probability of getting any one of these numbers? So if I wanted a 3, the probability is going to be 1 out of 3. I'm sorry, not 1 out of 3. I am so sorry. Let me take that off. There we go. 1 out of 6. And then what's the probability of rolling, say, a 6? 1 out of 6. So the probability of rolling any one outcome is 1 out of 6. Now, what is the probability of rolling an even number? Well, what are your number of ways that an event can occur, that an even number you can get? Well, there's a 2, there's a 4, and a 6. So that means that we have a choice of 3, and then how many total outcomes? That would be 6. So you can also reduce this to 1/2. Some people do reduce, other people don't. It's totally, I mean, we'll talk about that. It's not a huge deal for me, or a huge deal breaker. Now, we also talk about what's the probability of rolling an odd number. Well, how many odd numbers do we have? If you notice, there are 3. 1, 2, 3. And so out of the total number of outcomes, it's 6. So again, 3 out of 6. Again, dies are commonly used when we talk about probability. So we're going to move on to the next page, and then experiment 3. We are now talking about a glass jar that has all these different color marbles in it, okay? This is another one that's very commonly used, okay? So if we choose a single marble at random from the jar, what's the probability of getting a red one? Well, how many red ones are in the jar? And if you notice up here, it says 6. Now, that's number of ways that we can get, number of options of getting a red one. There are 6 choices because there are 6 red. But now keep in mind the denominator is the total number of possible outcomes. So what you want to know is how many marbles are in the jar. In this case, you're going to add all these up. So we're going to have 11 plus 11, so it looks like it's 22. And so the probability of choosing a red marble, or another way to write that is P of red, all right, is going to be 622. So since we're using the color, the next one is green. So the probability of getting a green marble is going to be, how many are green? It's going to be 5 of 22. Always out of 22 because we're in the same jar of marbles. And then let's go to a blue. And so let's do P of blue. And so the probability of getting a blue marble is going to be 8 over 22. All right. And then the last one's going to be yellow. So the probability of getting a yellow marble, and I know this is a little difficult to read because I can even see that, is going to be 3 out of 22. Now, on the ones that are even, such as the red and the blue, you can reduce those down, but it's not, again, it's not a deal breaker. But if you notice what I did, I took how many choices were there for that particular color, and let me get to my, let me get here to my pointer, and how many were there? And they told you in the problem. And then to come up with the denominator, how many total number of possible outcomes are they? All I did was just add all the numbers up. And so that's what we're going to be doing. And so that takes you through the first 3 experiments. We're going to do 2 more, and then I'm going to stop it there because then the next one will have a different idea. And so let's go on. Oh, whoops, right there. Okay. So now we are talking about now pulling cards. And so what you see on this particular screen is we've shown you, if looking at a standard deck. Okay, so you're choosing a card at random of a full deck of cards. So you see you have your 4 suits. Some of them are red, some of them are black, some of them are numbers, some of them are face cards, and so you have that. And so all we're going to do is you have to know how many total cards are in the deck. Okay, so total cards in the deck are always 52. So what is the probability of choosing any card? Well, that one is going to be, we're going to change it to there. It's going to be 1 out of 52 to pull any card. Now, what is the probability of choosing a card that's red? Well, you have to know how many red cards there are. Half the cards are red. So the probability of getting a red card is going to be 26 out of 52. The next one would be a probability of getting a black card, and you can probably guess that one because half the cards, again, are black. So you're going to do 26 out of 52. So then, what is the probability of drawing a club? And so you look and you see how many there are, and you should be able to go through this and figure out how many is a club, how many aces. Well, there are only a certain number of aces, so probability of pulling an ace. Then you have what's not a face card. Well, that means you're not drawing any of these 12 cards. So you want what's left. And so you should be able to finish that up, and we can verify that in class. Going to the next slide, last one we're going to do on this one, flipping a coin. Again, another commonly used situation for probability. Keeping in mind when you flip a coin, you only get two choices. You can either get heads or tails. And you see you have a pretty picture of a little quarter. So what's the probability of choosing heads? Here are your two choices. Only one of them is heads, so you're going to do 1 out of 2. And then probability of getting tails. Again, 1 out of 2. All right, and so there you go. That should take us through the first part of this. So the next podcast will include the next few vocabulary terms that we're going to do.